Some figures from folklore return to us generation after generation. There's just something about their story that re-engages. Even as times change, those characters continue to have something relevant to say to us, refusing to be confined to our memories of the past. So how are modern artists and storytellers influenced by the Golem and the themes in its story?
In this episode of Reboot Rescored presents the Golem, we explore the ever-morphing folklore of the Golem and where its presence is felt in today's artistic world.
Scoring this installment is I, a founding member of the legendary Japanese avant rock bands of the Boredoms and Hanatarash. I is known for his chaotic live performances and assaulting musical creations that will take your breath away. There is no other artist in the world quite like I, so get ready for an intense experience that only he can bring.
You know, Torri, there's this old adage in filmmaking that sometimes it's more powerful what we don't see. We get that idea from Alfred Hitchcock, but years and decades before Hitchcock, Paul Wegener seemed to have an innate sense that we could show images and convey terror without using explicit ideas or explicit imagery. I feel the emotion, but I also feel the fear that audiences in 1920 who watched this film must have experienced.
100%. I think his skill in kind of keeping things simple and pulling things back allows the audience to use their imagination, to connect to this character in a way that feels so personal, and that's what creates true fear, is that personal connection. And so I think he managed to do this in a way, and at a time that I would never have expected him to do so. And so I'm so excited to kind of like dip into this world and to examine this world with our guests today.
Kate Scelsa is a multi-hyphenate artist who uses her experience as an author, playwright, musician, and actress to reimagine how we tell stories. Her debut novel, Fans of the Impossible Life, has received numerous accolades and has been published in 10 languages. Her work with the Elevator Repair Service Theater led to her traveling the world and debuting her play, Everyone's Fine with Virginia Woolf.
Oh, and when she's not creating stories on the page, she's performing with her band, The Witch Ones. We talked with Kate to dive into the power of story, astrology, and the tale of the Golem.
Kate, it is such a delight to have you with us. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I wonder if we could begin by talking a little bit about how your interest in the Golem and this archetype and this idea, from folklore first came into your life, and what were your first reactions to this idea of the Golem?
That's an interesting question. Actually, it was when I first went to Prague, and I actually had this really emotional reaction without even fully knowing the whole story. And I bought my grandmother a little Golem figurine as my gift to her from Prague. And I there was something about it, and I don't know if she fully understood why I got it either. I was sort of like, I don't know why, but this sort of strange little monster. And I think at the time I didn't know I guess this is part of the story, if it was a protector or a destroyer, right? And I thought that dichotomy is so interesting. I mean, also have either of you been to Prague?
No.
I haven't. No.
So when I first went, I was traveling with this theater company I worked with, and I was getting to go to all these places in Europe for the first time, and having this experience also of looking at Jewish history in these places for the first time. And the Jewish history in Prague is so fascinating. I mean, like many places, it basically doesn't really exist except in this one very concentrated spot where it's like a tourist attraction. Like, come to the Jewish cemetery and the oldest synagogue, and it's all in this one little block. And there was something so mysterious about it. Like, the fact that the story takes place in Prague makes a lot of sense to me. It feels very mystical and magical and on the verge of darkness at all times. And I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the relationship between like that figure and then, of course, like the closest figure to my heart through mythology and storytelling is the witch, right? This like figure that moves in darkness, that is sort of like kept on the edge of town, that you call upon like when you need them, like conveniently when you like need to get something done, the witch is your friend and you need her. But like when you're afraid of her and it's like you're done with her, she's the pariah. So just in general, I think that's a fascinating figure in storytelling.
Why do you think that is? I think because I'm the same way. Like I have always been drawn to witches. Even just like in like my culture of like the people who you would go to for, it was never seen as, in being African American, it was never seen as something bad. But I felt like just the powers that be said that people who dabble in that world, it's evil. But I think there is something, like you were saying, destroyer, protector. There's something to these characters that kind of sit in that space of ambiguity. Why do you think people, being the storyteller that you are drawn to that?
Well, I think it's a compelling figure. I mean, even in our history, like I've been working a lot with the witch trials recently, and this idea of having a certain population that whatever is the mainstream in that moment needs to project all of their own fears about their shadow self onto this population. So they serve as this like mirror, this container, and that sort of puts it outside of yourself, right? Then I don't have to deal with it because here's my worst fears personified, and whether or not that's true, and that there is something really interesting also that often the population or the figure being feared has a very deep relationship with nature, and that there is something in there for me around industrialization, like that Like, don't look to nature for your answers. Don't look to nature for your healing. Like, that's not what we're doing. That's not what this is about. We're about, why don't you buy this thing? Why don't you let me sell you this thing? Like, a population that is actually in touch with the true powers of nature is not a population that can be manipulated into buying a bunch of stuff, right? I mean, and so for me, the Golem story also, it's a story about nature, right? Like this, it's about reanimation. It's about the idea that humans, well, and also like that relationship with nature and working with nature in that way would lead to evil. It's a cautionary tale. Whereas actually working with nature and actually being in tune with nature and spirituality that's in tune with nature is a very subtle thing. You're not raising the dead, you know? It's powerful, but it's not summoning evil.
Kate, it has been such a delight to talk to you. Thank you so much for your insights. We really look forward to seeing where your work continues to go, and thank you for talking to us today.
It's so great talking with you guys. Thank you so much.
Next time on Reboot Rescored presents The Golem, the thrilling conclusion to this silent horror classic.